And we should be live, I think, hopefully. So I am here with Wyatt Claypool, someone I've talked to before in the past. Had on some past. Oh crap! One second. Oh, I had my stream up on another. There we go. I was getting a crazy echo because I had my stream unmuted on another channel, or another tab rather. Uh, Should be good now. So, like I was saying, I'm here with Wyatt. We're talking about the 2024 election, which is getting underway now, and they're having the Iowa caucus. It looks like Trump is all set to win it. I think everyone has predicted he's going to win it. I'll go ahead and pop it up on the screen here if I can.
I'm going to quickly jump over to just Real Clear Politics. I want to go see what the exact averages they were giving to all the candidates before this, because I'm pretty sure this is an overperformance for Trump.
Yeah, that's kind of the whole question. Like, no one's questioning whether Trump's going to win or not. The whole question is, how much does he win by? And it seems like the benchmark everyone's talking about is this 50% thing, which I don't know where that came to be a thing, but I guess that's like the benchmark now. I don't know. That's all the commentators. All the commentators have been saying that.
The Real Clear polling average appears to be 52.5% that they were predicting for Trump, Haley 18.8, DeSantis 15.7, Ramaswamy 6.8, Hutchison 0.8. So I think that he is a little bit above, but I think we'd say that that's within the margin of error. So it's actually the polling averages have been pretty on point. Individual polls have been wildly off, but overall it's kind of triangulated to a pretty accurate result.
Yeah. People people with polls, it always pisses me off that like people the way they get upset about polls, and they're like, oh well, the polls are all wrong, they're wildly off, and it's like I don't think that people understand how polling works, and I have something I've been studying actually, and it's like they don't understand that, like, yeah, they'll have polls and sometimes they're wrong. Like in 2016 they had problems and they readjusted and they reweighted them in order to like compensate for non-response bias for like Trump supporters and stuff, and they fixed it. And then they would complain about like the midterm polls in they was it 2022, whatever it was, and they were saying this is way off because Republicans are supposed to have this giant red wave. The polls actually in that election were exceptionally accurate. It was just that it was a really tight and close election.
You just need to look at the individual polls. Some pollsters, like, let's say Pennsylvania with Oz and Fetterman, is that you would see an Oz +8, then you would see a Fetterman +8, and you'd see an Oz +3, Fetterman +3, Oz +1, Fetterman +5, and when you average it all together, it's like, oh, it's close.
But the thing is, okay, in 2022, the polls were bad at predicting the winner, but that doesn't mean they weren't accurate. Like, just because they're bad at predicting the winner doesn't mean they're inaccurate, because as long as if it's very close, the poll is not going to be good at predicting the winner, but it's going to be good at predicting that it'll be a close election. So like what I mean is, a more accurate poll, like if the poll predicts that the Republican's going to win by 1 point, and then the Democrat wins by 2 points, that's a more accurate poll than if the Republican actually won by like 10 points.
Oh, 100%. That's within the margin of error. Also, I've told this to people on my channel because I do a lot of videos on polling. It's just the nature of Canadian politics. Things move slower. There's not as much investigative journalism. Big news stories leak out slowly. So oftentimes you're sitting around talking about polling. And I will have audience members say, well, who trusts the polls anyways? They're rigged. They're whatever.
I hate that crap. I hate it. They don't understand how
they even less sense. In Canada, it makes even less sense because our polls are very accurate. The amount of pollsters that you can say have actually messed up elections are like, you can count them on one hand. It's like Calgary's mayoral election, and it's like mayoral elections, nobody polls. So the one pollster who was doing it overestimated turnout for one candidate. And the thing is that even with bad polls, even with polls that are obviously a bit of an outlier, usually you can tell at least you can glean some information. Obviously, you
Yeah.
get polls like Wisconsin in 2020 where there was a Biden plus 17 result, and then it's within a decimal point.
But then they
That's
go back and
probably
they reweight it. They figure out what the problem was and they fix it. Like,
that was probably sometimes what pollsters do is one, they call people at bad times of day and they get a lot of people working in the cities to pick up the phone where a bunch of people working on farms are not going to pick up a phone and do a poll. Or what they do is they do a big national poll where they poll 20,000 people and then they say
oh
this is
yeah.
the Minnesota result. It's like that's actually way too small a sample size for
Well,
Minnesota
but the
when you think
sample
about it.
size isn't even that important. What was that classic example? I think it was from the 30s or something.
That guy in the
Um,
middle is so uncanny to me. Is it just me?
yeah, the uncanny
He's so
valley game.
big. That guy must
Yeah.
be like 6'5" when he stands up. That's like a giant. We found the last one. I'm sorry, that distracted me.
No, you're good. Um, but no, what I was saying, there's that classic example of some poll. I want to say it was Gallup or Pew or one of the like classic people. This is from like the 30s, where there was some massive like phone poll where they had a huge sample size, but this other person, I would say it was Gallup. I don't remember now. You can look it up, like classic 30s poll or whatever, where they had a much smaller sample size, but they weighted it correctly and they like did the poll in the correct manner and applied the correct weights with a much smaller sample size, and they were much more exceptionally accurate. But anyway, none of this is neither here nor there. We're all talking about polls now, and no one wants to hear that. We're
No,
here
no,
to
no.
talk about
I literally just tweeted out the link to the stream because everyone likes it when I talk about polls, specifically saying I was talking about polls.
poll nerd shit. No one wants to hear this. Well, maybe some people do. Political nerds.
No, I was just gonna say, but the thing is that one of the things that you can glean from a lot of polls, even if it's going to be off by 4 or 5 points, is oftentimes you can figure out momentum. Because sometimes a poll right before an election day, when it shows, this is the thing with Nikki Haley. The polls showing a Nikki Haley surge are a little bit
Oh yeah.
overstated. But the thing is, they were proving that a lot of people who were fans of Nikki Haley before the Iowa caucuses were kind of activated to finally get involved. So
Mhm.
when they were a unique phone number that the pollsters were trying to spin up, they were immediately picking up saying, yes, Nikki. So yeah, she wasn't going to get 25%, 22% of the vote like some of the outlier polls are showing, but those polls at least, indicated that there was going to be some forward upward momentum for her going into this.
Yeah, and it looks like, I mean, what we're looking at right now on the screen, um, her and DeSantis have been jumping back and forth, basically tied, which is not what either of them wanted. It's,
Mhm.
they each wanted to come in a strong second, and it looks like just what the polls predicted. Basically, Trump coming in around 50%, and then the two of them sort of struggling around 20%, which is not good for either of their campaigns.
And my thing is that you can't blame any of them. At the end of the day, Trump is just a big personality, so it doesn't matter how they ran this race.
Oh,
But
yeah.
I think they could have gotten a little bit closer. But I think that especially DeSantis's
I
campaign
think,
has been a
yeah,
bit of a
I
study on
agree.
how not to run for office.
I agree. Yeah, I think DeSantis could have done much better. I think he had the chance, and like personally, I like Haley. She's my favorite in the race. DeSantis, I thought had the best chance of being a real challenger to Trump, though, and I like him too, um, for different reasons. But I thought he stood the best chance because he could actually get like core, Republican base support. Whereas Haley, it's like she's sort of relying on people like me, which are not the base of the Republican Party. It's like
Here,
centrist left people and independents, and then like some centrist right people. And that's just not enough. Like I don't think she'll ever be able to pull away enough Trump support. Whereas DeSantis could, because like people like me would vote for DeSantis, and he could also get the Trump people to vote for him. He's like that in between kind of thing.
yeah, but here's the problem with Haley from the start. I think is that in a certain sense her campaign's too obvious. And maybe you didn't see this, but the thing that immediately, no, obviously I'm not American, so I can't vote. So I, to a certain extent,
Oh
don't
yeah,
care as much. But when Haley announced, there's so many clips of her going around saying, you know what, America needs its first female
Oh god.
Indian-born candidate. It's like, oh, good. It was too, you know what I mean? It was too obvious. It was like someone came to her and said, we need to find a scientific way of picking the perfect lane for you in this election. And I think that there is a lot too much of like advisors telling you
Well,
this is your lane and you're going to do this, that, and the other thing because that's what someone in your lane would do. And you're in
honestly,
the progressive Republican lane. It's like, no, stop it. She was way better as the UN representative for the US. If she put on that kind
yeah.
of a personality, she'd be doing way better right now. The problem is,
I
oh no,
no,
so you go.
go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just going to say the problem is that her entire campaign is too obviously trying to go for non-Trump voters, so that in a certain sense she becomes a villain, and DeSantis voters aren't going to put her second because she's obviously just the person trying to beat Trump. Just as Chris Christie obviously wasn't going to win because
Oh
it's too much of a get Trump candidacy. Whereas at least, and this is a strange compliment to give out, at least Vivek Ramaswamy, you could say that if you're a Trump person, you could vote for him without feeling guilty.
That's another question because Vivek is a weird one to me because I said about Chris Christie, I thought he did exactly what you would do if you actually wanted to just hurt Trump and see Trump lose. You would do what Christie did, which is I'm just going to run a campaign where I take all the money, I run negative ads against Trump, I speak rhetorically against him, and then I drop out. And it looks like I got an ad here for South Park or something. I'll try and skip this. But you just drop out. You spend all that money, running negative campaign ads against Trump and stuff. You drop out. Maybe you don't endorse anybody. Even I think I said maybe he should endorse, but then I thought about it and I was like, actually, his endorsement would probably hurt whoever he endorsed because he was so
Here's,
anti-Trump.
here's
He shouldn't even do that. He should just run all the negative Trump stuff, drop out before the voting starts, and that was smart. But Vivek, I don't get because Vivek, it's almost like he's trying to hurt Trump at this point
that's
because
where it actually made
he's
sense.
only taking votes from Trump as far as I can see.
That's where it actually made sense for Trump to stomp him a couple days ago.
Yeah,
When
he did that. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was like Vivek was going around saying, "If you vote for me, I can save Trump if he gets convicted." Like that is such a dumb
What?
thing to do. That
Yeah.
of course you're going to get squashed because that's like it's at the point where it's like a pop star's having to tell her stalker to please leave me alone kind of a thing.
I
It's just
don't know
like
what he's doing other than maybe he wants to be VP and Trump hasn't offered him that, so he's staying in the race.
I don't
Like,
think he offers anything to the VP slot too, so I don't think he's even going for that. I think
yeah,
he's
no,
aiming a little bit lower. Like he'll get. I think he wants to be press secretary. I think he'd take that.
yeah, he might. I don't really know. I have no idea what his motivation. He's such a weird candidate to me. Like I thought Nikki was running for VP originally, but maybe she was, and then she just started doing too well
Well,
because
DeSantis went after her because he's going after her for not ruling out being a VP. But the problem is she would when I say make a bad VP pick, I'm talking about it in like the most political sense possible. Not that would she be a bad person to be the VP, which is effectively just whoever's going to be the potential president. No, she wouldn't be a bad person at all. The problem is that a South Carolina former governor does not help you on the electoral map that
okay,
much.
yeah. I
Maybe some demographic things. She's a bit softer, a bit of a lighter touch, and that helps with some voters getting them all over the finish line. Some independents. Maybe you can claw over some Democratic voters in like Virginia for you, but it's a lot of the places she helps you doesn't really matter. Like you want this is why people are saying Kristi Noem's going to be the pick for Trump, even though it's like the South Dakota
yeah, I
governor?
think
Yeah. Okay. So like it's a South Dakota governor or whatever, North Dakota, one of those two. I don't know which because I'm Canadian.
it's the same.
That one
I don't know
helped out.
either. I'm American.
Yeah, even that one helped out a little bit more. That one, I would pick someone from I would pick John James from Michigan if I was Trump, just assuming that Trump's going to be the nominee. If I'm
Oh,
and the
really?
same thing with Joe Biden. If I was Joe Biden, I would ditch Kamala Harris. I would have someone execute her in Minecraft
If
and
I was
tell her
Joe
that she's not
Biden, if
allowed to
I
come
was Joe
back.
Biden, I would drop out of the race and just
Oh,
have
100, yeah.
Michelle Obama or somebody.
That's the funny thing is I
I
have
mean,
to, I have to give Cenk Uyghur some credit because you can't as clownish as it is, he's even trying to run for office.
He's been right about Joe Biden, I think.
That's the
Right?
whole point. Is I think that he's running to try and get rid of that restriction on non-native born citizens being able to run for president, which is a
Well,
little
yeah.
bit silly. And then two, he's just running to basically go on a "I told you so" tour.
He just wants Joe Biden not to be the candidate because I think he's right in his tirades, as crazy as Cenk is, and obviously I don't like Cenk, but like when he says Joe Biden's a terrible candidate, I think he's correct, and that he's like on the path to losing, which is weird to me about this whole election, is that the only two candidates, they're like the worst possible candidates that they seem to be rallying behind, which is Trump and Biden. Whereas like I really think any Republican would have a better chance than Trump would at beating Biden. And
That's
I
the one
think,
thing I disagree with. Is I think actually Trump, you can't. That's the funny thing, is that the Republicans, if they went with DeSantis, they'd lose. If they went with Haley, they'd lose. If they went with any
what?
of these people, they'd lose.
I
But
don't
the
believe
problem
that
is
for a
that
second.
the Trump crowd will not come out and vote if those two are the not if he's not the candidate. And the
Well,
thing is, I think it's
I guess
substantial enough.
the way I could see that is because the reason I think that might be true is because Trump would probably just run as a third party anyway.
He'd
Uh,
probably win
it,
states. That's this funny thing.
and
And
he would run anyway. But like
he's a
I
lot
don't
like
think
Teddy Roosevelt.
I think the thing with I don't know. I've seen polls with like Nikki Haley winning against Biden by like 17 points. And it's like
The
I
problem
feel
is
like
that you remember you're picking up a lot of voters in California, in New York,
well yeah,
in
but
like
like
Oregon, who are saying, "Oh yeah, Nikki," and it's a national
independence.
poll. When you go down to the specific states, it's usually Trump that has the better lead when you go to swing states. And I think with Trump, it's just that the calculus is, even if he didn't run third party, I think you'd have a bunch of them start voting Kennedy then.
I think Trump just has so much baggage though. Like I said this in a stream I did recently. I still think even in spite of the polling, um, which has been giving an edge to Trump, I still give the edge to Biden uh, because I feel like he drives out the vote against him as much as he drives it for him. And it's with independents, I think independents really just don't like Trump.
I
Um,
agree on a one-on-one.
Especially after 2020. And so it's a hard thing. I think it'll be close. And like I said, I back in the day, 2 years ago or whatever, I was laughing at people that are like, "You're going to reelect Trump. He has no chance at all after the 2020 mess and all that stuff." But I think it's a lot closer now. I put it at like a 60-40.
Well, remember this
Um,
last election in 2020 was hyper close. It was 42. It was
yeah,
within
yeah.
42,000 votes in all the swing states.
Oh yeah. I have no doubt about that. And it's also all the other numbers, whereas literally everybody thinks their lives were better under Donald Trump than they were under Joe Biden. Almost, Joe Biden's approval numbers are like thirty
I think you could
percent
argue that in terms of like the
disastrous.
economy and spending and stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah, and like everyone thinks that, but like he's still so unpopular because of so much other stuff. So he's like this weird. He's always been a weird candidate, but like
Here's the thing. This is a weird take
he
from me.
inspires so much love and so much hate at the same time. I think it's
This is my strange take on Trump. I think it's actually healthy for him to be reelected for the U.S. because
oh
I think
god,
that
I don't know.
yeah, I think that yeah, I know there's gonna be pushback. I think that regardless of what people think about him and being a bore and being not a great person and being a narcissist and all this stuff, the thing is that at least I think Americans would then have the moment in their sort of decision making for voting that'd be like, okay, he's a bit of a dick. At the same time, I'm voting because of the economic policies. And so basically, what Americans had is that they voted Trump over Hillary first, then they voted Biden over Trump, and then they were given back the two options and say, okay, now which one had better policy? And it's like people are going to be like, I don't care that he's a jerk. I'll vote for him. And then I think in future elections, we'll have people being like, okay, but whose policy's better? Because we tried to vote on personality before and it didn't work.
Yeah, I'm just worried about what the second Trump administration would look like. Even it's like
That's the thing that would be
it's
weird. Like if
because
Michael Flynn gets a position, like no.
the first administration was basically normal Republicans. It was like he just took the most competent people that did the best. He was like picking people uh, that were normal, and that's why he didn't do a lot of the like kind of crazy things. Like he didn't pull us out of NATO, which I'm worried he might actually do that if he goes into another
I
term.
think the funny
Uh,
thing is, I think that the funny thing is, I think he'd be worse on certain aspects and he'd be better on others. I think he might be even more protectionist than he was the first time, but with lower taxes and a lot of other stuff, it might kind of balance out, so it might not be too much of a disaster. But I think on foreign policy, he would be good just purely to spite Joe Biden, because overall he was
well,
better on foreign policy than Joe Biden.
true,
I
true.
actually was always skeptical he would ever have pulled out all the troops from Afghanistan, because if he started pulling out troops and the Taliban started moving, he would immediately take the moment where like, I can squash a bunch of people and take credit for something. He
I
would
think
probably
that's
stuck
right.
around just to squash people.
I,
Uh,
yeah, I think that's right. But
same thing with Ukraine. Same thing with Taiwan.
I am worried about the second administration though, because
No, I agree
the
though. Yeah.
first administration, I don't think his second administration will look anything like his first one. I don't think he's gonna pal around. I don't think it's gonna be like Mike Pompeo and Mike Pence and John Bolton. These people in there. I feel like it's gonna you're gonna have
Know
like
who I'd really like in
Cherry
Homeland
Lake
Security
and
though?
like
Know how I'd like in Homeland Security though that he would probably get it, or
who
I'd hope would get it, would be Stephen Miller. I'd hope Stephen Miller would get that.
maybe I don't know,
But there
man.
are some really good people who are still around, and I think that, like with Christie getting thrown under the bus, and like with Mitt Romney getting thrown under the bus, when he was picking people for like top positions, I think that you will be a little bit shocked with who he throws under the bus, because he always shocks with who he just kind of like guts at the very end.
Yeah, I
Like,
mean you
you
never
just
know
know
with
that
him.
he doesn't really give a crap about Vic Vake at all.
That's always the problem with Trump. He's like a black box. It's just like you don't know what you're gonna get. And it's like that's kind of the scary thing.
And
It's like that was the scary
politics
thing the
other than a
first time.
mystery box?
That was the scary thing the first time, and it turned out okay. I think the first time, I think it was better than Biden, honestly. But then it's
Yes.
just the second time.
Oh, and Biden is basically just every progressive instinct,
Yeah, he's gone
without any
so
checks on it. That's the funny
well.
thing is all the
Biden was
Bernie.
such a he ran as like a moderate and then governed as a far left progressive.
It's
And
like it's honestly the reverse, and the Conservative Party in Canada is way better today. But it was like what Biden is suffering from is like the reverse conventional wisdom of the Conservative Party in Canada. The conventional wisdom of the Conservative Party is that you talk like a conservative, but you make all your policies hyper moderate because that might bring people in, but then you muscle through it and pretend that you're being still super conservative, which is like the worst thing you could possibly do, because all the people who think that you're radical still think that you're radical based on how you talk, though all your policies are ticking off your own base. But the idea is that you're going to piss off moderates and they're all going to run away because you weren't catering to them enough. That's the thing with Biden, is that he's like terrified of his progressive base, that if he doesn't cater to them enough, like 100% of them are going to leave. Whereas John Fetterman would honestly be a better presidential choice at this point, because he understands when
yeah,
the progressives go too far and knows when to throw them under the bus.
that's
That's
so
where
weird.
he
Yeah,
probably easily gets reelected in his state, just from how he's been behaving, regardless of how he votes. Has the right demeanor on how to deal with when your progressive base gets a little bit too uppity. But the thing is, again, the Conservatives in Canada is that they are terrified of even giving any policy to their actual conservative base.
yeah.
Before Polyev, I will clarify in case someone tries to clip me out of context, since I'm running for a nomination.
So what do you think's going to happen here, man? We got this. Do you think it's going to be Biden and Trump, or do you think there's some wild scenario where either Biden or Trump is not the candidate? What probability would you place
I think
on
there's a
this?
50-50 it's not Biden, but I think
Oh
it's
wow, wow.
like a 95 it's Trump. I think the 50-50 is that Biden goes through the primary, wins it, and he's like, I've tied up this nomination, but you know what? I am giving this over to Gavin Newsom or someone like that. And then he
Wow.
basically like as like the conciliatory thing, and then Gavin says, well, of course I was never running. I was just here to support the president. He's like, he's always been here to support me and whatnot. And when you have like Gavin Newsom for some reason going on vacation with like Bill and Hillary Clinton, I feel like there was a little bit in the background of people saying, okay, there's a chance he doesn't want to run. So how are you going to do this thing? Not that like the Clintons are those who like spread all of the important information around the party, but I think they generally are the type of people who have good insight on how you should run for president. As much as I don't like Hillary or Clinton or Bill Clinton, they are good at running for office, and I think Gavin is probably grabbing some advice from them.
Yeah, that would seem like a smart thing to do. But
I think
if
Gavin's honestly a worse candidate, though. I think his
Well,
neg
well, but
are higher than Biden, and he does not appeal to black voters.
but why wouldn't? Well, yeah, I mean, you could take anyone you want. At this point, I almost think almost any Democrat would be doing better than Joe Biden, even if they're just younger and that's all they
Amy
have.
Klobuchar would be a super smart pick.
Well, I maybe.
Maybe you know things about her that I don't.
I don't know. I feel like there's like no one, and that's kind of how we ended up with Joe Biden. Is there was just no one else that was like Joe Biden was just like a nobody, like kind of a gray man, I guess you would call it. Um, and
This
it's
is
like I feel like if he's gonna hand it over to someone else, he would have just said, "I'm not running for another term. I'm old. I want to retire. I'm gonna let it go, and maybe I'll endorse, I don't know, Michelle Obama or like,
here's maybe a good way of him spinning it. Not that the Democratic Party will ever take my advice. I don't really care if anyone takes my advice. But I don't know. Why I'm even prefacing that. I'm on a stream with with you. I don't think anyone's like, coming on listening to me. But like,
no, no, no.
if Biden was smart, he'd win the primary, and he says, "I won the primary myself, knowing I was not going to run, or not going to run, but I wanted to keep party unity, and I want us to all like you all got behind me. I now want you guys to all get behind X person." And then the X person would come out and say, "Oh, thank you, Joe, blah blah. I had no idea." And then turn him dropping out into some stupid unity message, but it might actually work. The thing is, though, whenever I've listened to Stephen Michael Davis's show, I really like his analysis of elections, as well as when I've talked to Sean from National Justice Warrior, is that people do underrate how smart of a politician Biden is. No doubt he's slow. Every time people say he has dementia, no, he doesn't.
No, no,
He
no.
really doesn't.
He's just old.
That's the one.
He's
That's the
just old.
one theory that everyone believes, that he has dementia, that I do not actually believe.
Yeah,
I
that's
think he's
bullshit.
just slow. He has a stutter, so it makes it more difficult for him to talk, because he actually probably has to stop and wait and be able to figure out how he's going to phrase stuff. They've said that your stutter never goes away, and it gets more difficult to
I don't
control
even
as you
think
get
it's the
older.
stutter, man. He's just old. Like if you talk to old people,
That's my point. He's old,
they
and he's having to
yeah,
manage to not trying to not stutter, because
yeah.
it becomes more mental effort. Because every once in a while, you'll have moments of him where he's totally fine.
I've never bought the dementia stuff. I think he's just really old, and if you have old grandparents and stuff, you talk to them, they're slow, but it's not. Dementia is a totally different thing. Have you ever
Yeah.
experienced and talked to someone with dementia? That's like a completely different
Yeah,
experience.
and here's
It,
the thing too. Joe Biden's a congenial liar. Like, he just lies for no reason.
Mhm.
And do you think a man who lies a lot, like in terms of, like, remember his '88 campaign, he'll just make up stories and stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah.
He'll The thing is that when people do stuff like that, like when they're liars and then they get older, yeah, you're gonna find he trips up over himself a lot more, because he doesn't prepare for anything. Because liars don't exactly pre-rehearse what they're gonna say as much, because they'll just make it up.
Yeah, yeah. No, like I don't know what's gonna happen. I'm looking at this on the screen now, though. We've got, I don't know how much percent of the vote in, but it's basically like what we would have thought. Trump's hovering around 50%. DeSantis looks like he's edging out Haley a little bit.
This
I
looks like
guess.
I think I might have more updated numbers from the New York Times. It says 86% of the votes in. It's 51 Trump, 21.2 DeSantis, and 19.1 Haley. And Vivek's at 7.7.
Yeah, that's rough. Those are rough numbers for DeSantis and Haley.
And that's
They
exactly what they were polled at. And the
yeah,
thing is that must make them have to take a long, hard look, because even Haley, if the numbers are to be believed, unless for some reason she gets 100% of Christie's vote, she's not winning New Hampshire.
well, I I don't know. For her, I think she's got a stronger, like DeSantis. I think has to have a strong second place coming out of this, or he's done. For her, she's got a shot in New Hampshire. I think she absolutely does, based on the polls and everything. If she's got even, what was the last poll I saw? Even
My
like
thing is, I think
half of
that
Christie's
hey,
polls, I think she could win New Hampshire. Um,
the problem is that the whole polls that showed that she has a good chance were polls that had not outliers in the sense that don't believe them, but they were usually ones where Christie and Haley were at a higher watermark. But if you took kind of the average, it wasn't as good. I'd like to see in the next week if a poll comes out showing Christie's vote fully gets behind Haley, then maybe she has a chance. But even if Trump barely squeaks out a victory in New Hampshire, it's kind of over in the sense that in South Carolina he has a much better chance of clobbering her than he
Yeah,
does in New Hampshire, and New Hampshire is not a representative state for what the
yeah, it's
Republicans
true.
need to win. It's a very granola Republican state. Not even granola. It's very metropolitan.
They're not representative of national Republicans.
Yeah, this is.
Um,
I'm not sure what to say, but I mean, it's a very like small purple city arts and crafts show type Republican
yeah,
set. People,
but I
wine
think
mom
I think
Republicans.
she has a chance to win there. That's probably the best chance any candidate has of beating Trump in any state. I think is Haley beating him in New Hampshire. Uh, and I do think most of Christie's support would go behind her because I can't imagine Christie's support going to Trump at all. Like maybe DeSantis, but like Christie was so anti-Trump that I just can't imagine it goes anywhere but to Haley or just disappears. Uh, what do you think about it? Where do you think Christie's support would go?
Well, I do think it would probably go Haley first. The funny thing with Christie is that Christie actually, I was thinking of this at the start of the stream. If it was a one-on-one election between one candidate or Trump, I actually think Christie would probably do the best one-on-one.
I
Simply
don't know. What? Really?
because he would get most of Haley's people, and I think that he's enough of a personality that he'd have a better chance at winning some of these states. If it's DeSantis and Trump, people would just see it as Trump and the guy who's trying to be like Trump. Same with Vivek. If it's Haley, it's all the red Republicans versus the kind of minority blue Republicans. And with Christie, at least he gets all the blue Republicans and whatnot, and at least he's like entertaining. So I think that he could almost drive people out because it becomes almost like a boxing match.
Yeah, I don't know. I always saw
Assuming they could
Christie.
get on a debate
I
stage
always saw
together.
Christie as just an attack dog, and that was his whole thing. Was like, I hate Trump, and I'm just gonna like run a campaign to run a bunch of ads to attack Trump, and then drop out before any voting actually starts. It's kind of the way I saw him, uh, and I think most of anyone that was supporting him, which is probably a lot of independents and Democrats, I imagine, it's all going to go to Haley. I assume like 90% of it. Uh, Maybe not. I don't
The
know. Maybe
problem is
like,
even
I
he
can't
needed
imagine what
more
the
than
overlap.
100% of his
Like,
support.
what would be the overlap between like Christie's supporters and Trump's? I can't even imagine that. That's like,
It would just be it'd be more of a New Jersey thing, I guess, only in New Jersey that they like Christie screw you attitude. And Christie and Trump, that's my point. Christie and Trump are actually quite
trash.
alike,
Yeah,
a lot
yeah,
alike in
yeah,
personality,
yeah.
and that's why saying one-on-one they would do better because he would get all the anti-Trump Republican voters, but at least he might be entertaining enough he can get the entertainment Trump voters because a lot of Trump's voters are just entertainment voters. They just think he's entertaining.
Yeah,
And again, none of these people can beat him. I just think it would be the closer race.
yeah. I think I'm in line with you, man. I think at this point it's probably Trump and Biden. Unfortunately, from my perspective, I dislike both of them, but I think that's what we're gonna get again, and it's it's disappointing, but it seems to be what's lining up here. Especially, we're looking at these numbers here in Iowa. He's not just going to win Iowa, but probably win it with more than 50%, as far as the numbers we see on the screen here. And there's no competitor. Haley is probably going to come in third, from what it looks like here.
Yeah, no. So 89% of the votes in, Trump's at 51.1, and most of the remaining votes coming in seem to be putting Trump more up because I think Des Moines and Grand Rapids in these areas they have most of their vote in, where a lot of the places that still have no, actually it is kind of like the Des Moines area, so they actually might inch up a little bit closer. Jefferson County and southeast Iowa hasn't started counting yet. But I know it's a caucus, so it's not quite that. But each precinct doing their caucus procedures and whatnot. Man, imagine being Asa Hutchinson and spending all this money. You have 180 votes.
How
Then
much money did he even have, though? Like Asa, I forget Asa is even running like half the time.
But here's the thing: like any money more than $180 apparently is pathetic that you had to spend. Here's how sad the media in Canada is. The Canadian Broadcasting Corporation couldn't get the literal outlet that has relative to our population has the same budget as Fox News and CNN because like obviously they get $1.3 billion a year plus a bunch of other operating expense money that they get through like revenue that they generate, which is crazy that they barely are able to generate like $300 million in revenue from ads when they have a $1.3 billion grant from the public every year. But relatively to Fox's operating budget, it's about the same. The only person they could interview was Asa Hutchinson. They couldn't book anybody else.
Oh, God.
And even he was like, "I'm better than
They
this."
interviewed Asa Hutchinson.
Yeah, even Asa looked like he was too good for the CBC, which he probably is.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah,
It's,
like, oh, there's a reason why we're coming from the
I mean,
CBC.
but Canada, like, isn't your population? It's probably less than the state of Texas. Is that right? I
No,
don't know.
we're bigger than California. We're 40 million.
Oh, okay. Oh, well, okay. That's a lot bigger.
It used to be probably smaller than California, but like frankly, this is also an issue we're having. Immigration rates are way too high in this country. We're bringing in at least.
In your country, you're complaining about immigration. You're going to tell me an American?
No. I am going to tell you as an American because we have a much higher rate of immigration. We at least bring in 500.
I'm in Texas, man. Like we had 3
No.
million people.
No. We bring in 500,000 people per year just to become permanent residents and then potentially citizens. We bring in another several 100,000 students and temporary people who usually find a way to get onto the citizenship path. We bring in like 2.5–3% of our population every single year over the past 5 or 6 years. It's quite remarkable just how many. Like it's getting to the point where it's a problem for our healthcare system and our housing.
I'll give you that, but you have these like social welfare programs and stuff, and I'll also give you that it's like the numbers are small, but they're compared to the percentage of your population, they're much larger per capita.
There's this massive scam going on in Canada right now where people start up fake colleges in like mini malls. It's like it looks like a subway that was like taken over, and they get a fake university like college certification that they do so that people from like Punjab or other areas of India can sign up to go to this fake college for a fake degree that they're not actually going to study for. But then there's some immigration lawyer who runs the college can get them onto a pathway to citizenship. Like the laws around immigrating in Canada are crazy. Like we have such bad counterterrorism measures too, in the sense that like it's literally the #1 Western country for money laundering because we don't care.
Trump's about to talk. Do we want to hear Trump's speech here?
If you want, yeah.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and play it.
I'll check on the numbers again.
Let me go to the audio here. Well, he's already projected a win and at a pretty good percent.
And when he was a real estate mogul in the state of New York, and a reminder, a place where he no longer lives.
I'll be right back.
Moving to Florida because of all the legal trouble that he's had in this state. Still facing several lawsuits, more than 90 criminal allegations, indictment after indictment. He's going to have to get through a lot of potentially tricky legal issues before he can be the nominee if he continues this victory march. And it's still unclear, right? You talk to legal scholars, they don't know if those cases will actually go to trial while he is running for president. We're going to have to wait and see. There's a lot of unknowns here as we wait for him to take the stage. He's sort of soaking it all in and really enjoying this moment. As we look at the map in Iowa, he's essentially won every county. Is that right, Chuck Todd's telling me?
This is the big one. This is the home of Ames. This was Nikki Haley's only county. We've now more precincts caught it. He took the lead there. He's
99 counties. Trump looks like to lead and or win every single one of them. Former president's about to speak. Let's listen in.
Well, I want to thank everybody. This has been some period of time, and most importantly, we want to thank the great people of Iowa. Thank you. We love you all. What a turnout, what a crowd. And I really think this is time now for everybody, our country, to come together. We want to come together whether it's Republican or Democrat or liberal or conservative.
I just looked at the numbers for New Hampshire. It's pathetic that DeSantis is polling on average only 6.5%. That's the one thing that Haley has to watch out for. She underperformed here, or she performed as well as the poll said, which is effectively an underperformance from what she wanted. You could see her own supporters maybe not showing up for her in New Hampshire, thinking, she did badly in Iowa. All is lost, even though it was not really the state she had any hope of winning in the first place. And then because DeSantis has nothing better to do but vote to run in New Hampshire, maybe he ends up ripping away some of her supporters.
Well, I don't even know. DeSantis already said he's going to skip New Hampshire. He's just going to give up on it and go to South Carolina.
Which is really funny because that's her state.
Well, yeah. And that was my thinking was like, okay. And I was like a DeSantis guy. I was thinking like, okay, if anyone has a chance to knock Trump off, it's DeSantis. Haley started to show up, and it was like, well, she does. I think she does have a chance at winning New Hampshire. But then after that, it's like, okay, she's got South Carolina. It's her home state. Maybe she could pull off a miracle there. But then what? Like, it's, you're not going to win a Republican primary by relying on independents and Democrats to vote for you.
And I think that's a good way of putting it too.
What she's relying on. She's not going for the Republican base.
I think this is something that she has to ask herself too. How am I going to win a North Dakota? How am I going to win a Wyoming or a Montana or a Texas or a Louisiana? It's like you can't. That's the problem.
No.
So are you going to win 2 states and then nothing? Like, that's the problem. Is like, what do you think? What do you think that a New Hampshire win does to voters elsewhere?
Yeah,
the Republicans actually in California and New York, even as Democrat states, are not going to come towards you, because the thing is actually being a voter in a blue state as a red voter, or being in a super red state as a blue voter, it actually makes you hyper hardcore ideologically. Those people are actually not going to come over her. That's the thing, is New Hampshire would be like winning Rhode Island. It's not a representative state of just the personalities of Americans in other areas of the country.
Yeah, and I think that was her whole tactic, which was, I'll go in, and she did have a good chance in 2 early states, New Hampshire and South Carolina, because she was governor there. And even if she won both of them, I don't know where you go from there, other than her hope was it's going to be me and Trump. And then the question is just, do you want Trump again, or do you want something else? Literally anything else. And I guess that was her gamble. I think DeSantis had the best shot at actually knocking him off. But from what we're seeing here tonight, even if are these the final numbers, I don't know. But it looks like DeSantis is maybe eking out a slight second place, which is not enough. And DeSantis has no chance in New Hampshire or South Carolina or anywhere else. So to me, I feel like it's done.
Would you think a Ted Cruz would have performed better
in this election?
In this primary, yeah. Like, who's a Republican you could see actually having enough force of personality? Because
I think DeSantis was the best one. I think DeSantis was the best chance.
I actually don't think so. I think he's a bad first-time candidate, in the sense that in Florida, I don't think he has enough. He's bad at personality projection. So in 2018, he almost
he's a terrible campaigner.
That's my point. He's bad first time around. He's bad at projecting a narrative, projecting a personality. That's why, though, when he gets reelected, he gets reelected by with massive margins, because people got to see what he was like. So if we had if we were playing a game of everyone gets to be president for a week, and whoever does better, people are going to vote based on that. Yeah, he would do fantastic, but he doesn't get to be president before running for president.
Yeah, I think he's really good at governing and doing the job. I think he's really good at that, but he's a terrible campaigner. He should
fire a lot of his people behind him.
I don't even know if it's that. I think it's just him.
I think my point is that they make him lean into all of his weaknesses.
I think he's good at the job, but he's not. He doesn't have the personality. He doesn't have the voice. He doesn't have the. He's not a good campaigner. He's great at actually doing the job.
I think that he actually should have never even mentioned Trump's name the entire primary. I think that would have been much smarter because his campaign team, and they were literally paying like people putting out memes on Twitter and Facebook and whatnot. And a lot of it was taking like really dumb shots at Trump, whether they were true or not. It was just a dumb shot because even if you were right,
I don't know.
nobody cares.
I don't know. I feel like he might have done better if he went at Trump really hard from the right. I think he could have done better. And
but you don't go after Trump from the right. You go after Biden from Trump's right.
But I
That's
think
where you look better. You have to prove that you're better at attacking Biden.
I think if you're looking at a Republican primary, you could attack Trump from the right because Trump is a pretty he's not far right wing. He's not particularly socially conservative at all.
That's where protectionist policies are not right wing policies. They're actually very left wing policies.
I don't think he's that. He's not socially conservative at all. I think you could have attacked him there and maybe got somewhere other than I think there's just this whole this inescapable problem of Trump's supporters are dedicated to that man in a way that is I think insurmountable.
Here's another thing about this is more philosophical. This is more about the universe, I guess. But the universe begs for Trump to be president again in the sense that theatrical laws require the most theatrical thing to happen.
Yeah, and I've talked about this. What would be the funniest thing? Because I've talked about the real show is going to begin regardless. It almost doesn't matter who wins, whether it's Biden or Trump. There is going to be some kind of funny show to watch, whether Trump loses or Biden loses and Trump wins again. One of these sides is going to freak out hard. And we saw that obviously with the January 6th stuff. We saw that in 2016 when Trump won. Whoever wins, if it's Trump and Biden again, whoever wins, there's going to be some massive freak out from one side or the other. And I'm almost like, I hesitate to say that it's going to be funny. I think it will be, but it could be like tragic. It might almost, there might almost be, people might almost die. I don't know if it's going to be that bad. There will be riots, I think, no matter who wins.
Well, the funny thing is that I actually don't think there'd be riots if Trump doesn't win again. I think there's going to be like people going to town hall meetings and screaming for months. But I think you wouldn't have another J6 simply because people would be like, we've seen this before and we're not going to get trapped by feds again or something like that. And then that's why people are going to show up. Maybe. You're going to have a little bit of, we've seen this game before and we're not going to take
if Trump wins again, though, there's going to be a, like, you remember in 2016 when he won, it wasn't quite a J6 thing, but there were
like Antifa running around smashing.
There were riots and stuff. Yeah.
The funny thing is that if Trump wins, there'll be a bunch of no. When I say Democrats, I'm obviously not talking about the average Democrat. I'm just saying like people who would have voted Democrat. It'll be a bunch of radical Antifa people who voted for the Democratic candidate going up and smashing up their own Democratic.
There's a ton of people that, dude, they've been stirring people up. Biden's been, his whole campaign thing is, if Trump wins again, it's the last election ever. He's going to be a dictator. He's going to be a dictator. It's dangerous stuff. They've been.
That's where I think that Biden is a far more. The funny thing is Trump's lazy in a good way on a lot of the stuff. The funny thing is Trump actually is almost depending on the person. Trump's usually too lazy to hold too much of a grudge, so he usually moves on and does something else. So I don't think he would be that dangerous if he's the president. You'd have some bad policies, but I think on foreign policy, if you're a pure foreign policy voter, Trump would probably make it so that Taiwan doesn't get invaded.
Yeah, I like, to me, I don't even know what a second Trump administration would look like. But I think if it happens, if he wins, there's going to be a lot of people who have been stirred up by Biden, by a lot of people on the left who have said, you know, Trump's going to end democracy and all this stuff. There could be some scary stuff that comes out of that. And I don't know, maybe it wouldn't be that dramatic. Like, who knows? Usually, I guess it's not. But we'll see, I suppose.
Here's something funny to think about. This is almost kind of a bit off topic, but do you know that Donald Trump has a higher approval rating in Canada than Justin Trudeau does?
Oh, that wouldn't shock me. Trudeau, Captain Blackface over there.
Yeah.
He's been like, my God, how do you people keep electing him over and over? I don't
Because the Conservatives for the past, no, Andrew Scheer less, but Aaron O'Toole in the 21 election, because obviously we have more frequent elections when we have minority governments, so we call snap elections. Aaron O'Toole was the worst Conservative leader we've ever had. He was effectively just Justin Trudeau with slightly better spending. He was going to say, I'll do everything that Justin Trudeau is going to do, but I'll do it with 5% less taxpayer money.
Isn't that what a Canadian Conservative is?
No. Well, that's the stereotype that they created. That's why Maxime Bernier's PPC party
is there really like a strong
doing well for in 21. When I say doing well, I mean they went from 2% or 1.9% of the vote in 2019 to 5.2% in 2021. Was because the Conservatives were not conservative at all, whereas Pierre Poilievre is actually quite conservative on at least fiscal issues and social issues. It depends. It's a little bit more mixed, which to a certain extent, I think he's actually very pro-life before he became the leader, and then he became more mixed on social issues. And I think that's specifically because he knows these leaders, so he has to come off more mixed to make all the sides of the party happy. But like now he's actually quite conservative. And then we see the Conservatives jump way ahead in the polls over the Liberals. Like usually elections come down in Canada, or the last two elections came within like 1 or 2 points of the Liberals and the Conservatives. The Conservatives, depending on the poll, are now up to like 17 points above the Liberals. And it turns out that when you actually are an obvious Conservative running for office and you contrast with the Liberals, you actually start doing better. The problem with the last two guys is that they didn't contrast at all, so a lot of Conservatives just stayed home because they couldn't tell why they were supposed to be all fired up to replace Trudeau with someone who was barely any different. Or even then, if they won, you get a minority government, maybe for 2 years. You get really lukewarm Conservative policy, and then they probably get defeated because they're not willing to make enough changes to convince Canadians that they should stick with them.
Well, I'd always just assumed conservatism was kind of almost dead in Canada. Is there, like, what was the last Conservative PM? That
Harper.
Harper? When was that?
It was 2015, because obviously our guys stick around a lot longer.
That's not that bad.
But Harper was good. A little bit slower on policy. That's my criticism of him. He just moved slow because he is kind of a micromanager, kind of a personality. So a lot of stuff had to go through him or it wasn't going to get done. Because he just doesn't trust other people, not in like a bad neurotic way. He is a perfectionist. So that a lot of the policy he did was great. He also sometimes just moved a bit too slow, so that I think a lot of Conservatives got a bit tired because it never felt like there was enough activity, even though there's still good activity what he did put out. Before that, the most conservative person we've ever had leading the country was probably like Diefenbaker, which is like if you combined Goldwater with Nixon, that would be Diefenbaker.
So what are some of the like conservative, like what is a Canadian conservative, I guess, platform look like? Are they, because they're not going to be like American conservatives, I assume. They're not for the same sorts of like gun rights.
We are trying to get rid of the gun bans because we have a lot of dumb gun bans. Here's
you have like 5-round magazines and stuff that are like
no, you can get more than that. Like we have certain gun laws that are better. Like you can own a sawed-off shotgun in Canada, you can't in the U.S.
Well, yeah.
Here, the stupid. I know that's a very fringe example, but the thing that we would be doing is getting rid of the assault guns ban. It's just one of those dumb things where you just call any gun you don't like an assault weapon, and they're going after law-abiding gun owners. And in Canada, you need to have a license, a PAL license, a possession and acquisition license. And those people are 1/3. People who have a PAL are 1/3 as likely to commit any violent crime compared to the average citizen. And yet all the legislation goes after them for no reason. So like legitimately the Liberals just passed a bill. I forget what it's called, but we have it numbered like you guys do before it actually comes out and gets a new official name. But it's called the Bill C5. And the Liberals literally lowered the penalty for illegal weapon possession by gang members at the same time that they were trying to confiscate law-abiding gun owners' weapons, which is insane. It's just so illogical. So the thing is, we have the same issues as Republicans often, but they're to a different degree. So a big thing that we want to do is pass parental rights protections across the country because of like, imagine the worst, most woke school district in Oregon, that's basically what it's like in a lot of places in Canada. So a lot of people are like, you have to be able to let parents see your lesson plan as a teacher. You can't just say, oh, it's my classroom, I get to do what I want. No, parents get to know. You can't say that a kid in your classroom is going to identify as a different gender and then, not tell parents. That's insane. That, like, obviously parents have to know that stuff. You can't like start keeping secrets. Like, that's like legitimately the creepiest concept you can put to a parent, that your teacher has secrets with your kid.
Yeah, that's I don't know. I always thought of like Canada. It's such a weird thing. I would have like naturally I would think Canada would be more conservative just because there's so much rural space there.
100% though. Depending on the region, we're more conservative than a lot of American states because there's a lot of Wyoming type places in Canada.
Yeah, you've got all those rural territories, but I guess most of your population's centered in cities that are, right on the American border, essentially.
Yeah. Well, most of the population is within the bottom 10% of the country.
Yeah, it's an invasion force. I've called it before an invasion force because like 90% of the Canadian population is within 100 miles of the American border.
Yeah. So the thing that goes on there is like we have like the best MPs and MLAs in my opinion. Like some of them are from cities, but a lot of the best ones are from the rural areas because they're pretty well protected and they can do whatever they want. Funny enough, in my area that I'm running for the nomination, we have a really liberal conservative, except his personality might trick you into thinking he's more conservative. His name's Ron Liebert. Very kind of like a snapping turtle kind of a personality. Also is not conservative at all. Like in the sense that does not like social conservatives, does not care about tax cuts, does not care. Basically, his version of conservatism is let's get rid of the carbon tax and maybe let's try and spend less. Are we going to cut taxes? Nah, we'll just spend slightly less so we can maybe pay down some debt.
Like a Joe Manchin type guy.
Joe Manchin would be more conservative.
Oh God.
Yeah, like I'm thinking like who's her name? What's her name in what's the Democratic senator from Arizona? Kirsten Sinema. Where if you actually look at her voting record, she's actually quite left. But every once in a while, she says something where it's like, "Oh, maybe she's conservative."
I think she switched over to. I think she considers herself an independent now.
I honestly, even though he's a bit vulgar and people should watch out from listening to him, if it's even I probably shouldn't listen to him as much because it's a little bit intense. But if you've ever watched Razor Fist or the Rageaholic, he does a really good video on Kirsten Sinema that like when Trump was around, she voted against him like 90% of the time on legislation. Like the vast majority of stuff she voted against. Maybe she voted with him on a couple immigration things, but she's kind of clearly a plant just to make like McCain voters vote for her, in the sense that like a lot of this feels very rehearsed. In like she's still a Green Party socialist back in the day, and she hasn't really changed in any of her views. But once in a while, she'll stand up and clap for Trump at a State of the Union to make it seem like she's a real maverick.
It's so weird that there is that overlap between like to me anyway, like the Trump kind of wing and the far left sort of stuff, where they have certain issues where they're in agreement on, like isolationism, protectionism.
The funny thing is, Trump's not an isolationist. That's the weirdest thing. We actually have Tucker Carlson. This is how conservative certain parts of Alberta are. I went to a Ben Shapiro speech just the other day. Literally, it was within the boundaries of my riding, or like 5 minutes outside of it. And then we have Tucker Carlson coming both to Calgary and Edmonton. So like we're a very, very conservative place in the country. But actually, here's the funny thing. This is how the funny thing is, like the current Conservative Party would be a little bit to the left of the Republicans. When I say a little bit, I'm not saying like just slightly to the left. I just mean like center right, where the Republican Party's more. If we're imagining the political spectrum here, so I'm having to visualize this. If we're imagining the political spectrum, the Republicans are halfway all the way to the complete right, where the Conservatives in Canada are 1/3 all the way to the complete right.
Yeah.
And the Liberal Party is very much center, all halfway all the way to the left, and the NDP is a little bit left of them, almost 1/3 away from the right to the left, and then the Greens are almost to the far left.
Yeah.
But we've had moments like with the Alliance Party, the Canadian Alliance, where they might have probably been more conservative than the Republicans at the time. like the guy, and and I really like him. Stockwell Day, he actually might endorse me in my riding. He was like the leader, and he was like in the debates. Like he did a really good job in the 2000 debates in Canada. He wasn't going to win because it was very much a Western regional party. Because like the PCs or the Progressive Conservatives still existed, and they were splitting each other's votes for a while there. But he was like a pro-life creationist, flat tax supporting gun rights guy, and yeah, he did better than a lot of other former like conservative leaders had done. Because a lot of but he's great. He's still fantastic. He's great.
Well, it looks like I don't know. Oh, they've gone to commercial here, but it looks like what we're seeing in Iowa now. Basically, it's what we expected. Trump's right around 50%. I guess the one thing we didn't expect, it looks like DeSantis is maybe edging out Nikki Haley.
That's the thing.
But they're virtually tied. So this is a complete win for Trump, honestly, because he couldn't have hoped for anything better. He edges out over 50%. DeSantis and Haley end up tied, which is the best thing for him. He doesn't want a strong, second place.
He actually probably wants DeSantis to come second, because him coming second, even if he does not spend a single dime in New Hampshire, you will have 1% of voters saying, "Oh, he's the one who has a better chance of winning," and then you'll have like 0.5% of Haley voters go over to him, which is like a death knell to a campaign who needs every single vote that they can get to beat Trump.
So you think he's more worried about Haley than DeSantis?
I think state to state it depends. I think that he wants everything to fit into a specific pattern. That he wants DeSantis to do a little bit better here, so that Haley doesn't do as well in New Hampshire. Then they go to South Carolina, where DeSantis is spending a lot of money, and then they both probably have another Iowa result where they both come in at 18, 19%, and Trump just ends up running away with it. I think he kind of wants it staggered in a specific way.
Yeah. To me, like, you're just watching this, I think it's kind of over at this point, as far as I see. Like I don't know, there's still votes or whatever. There's other elections, but like, to me, it seems like Trump just has locked it up at this point. Like maybe Haley could win New Hampshire, but like we've talked about before, New Hampshire is not like it's not like the rest of the Republican Party.
It easier to win Connecticut and Rhode Island, but that's kind of it. That's at least maybe I'm wrong, but as a Canadian, I associate New Hampshire, Vermont, Connecticut, and Rhode Island as kind of like a 4-pack.
It's New England. It's New England.
It feels very retiree kind of country.
Yeah, and it seems like maybe she has a shot at New Hampshire, and then maybe she could get a shot at South Carolina. But like I said, I don't see any future for her after the early states and DeSantis. I mean, he's coming in second here, but it's not what it would have to be. It would have to be like DeSantis at like 30%, and Trump coming in under 50, and it's nothing. I feel like at this point it's Trump, and then Biden, unless he just like resigns.
Mm-hmm.
And decides to like.
But Cenk's not going to become the president.
Oh well, there's always that.
I don't know.
You know what? Maybe I'll give my vote to Cenk. I like him. I have watched TYT for a long time. I think he's funny.
Which state are you in, by the way?
Maybe I should give my vote to Cenk Uygur. Maybe the guy that could never win because he wasn't born in America.
I honestly kind of see his argument a little bit.
Really?
Yeah, like kind of, in the sense that like I think it was AJW who also made this point that like, yeah, if you were born in the States and then at 5 years old you moved back to mainland China and you became like an Orthodox communist, he came back, would people think it would be maybe a little bit illegitimate that you were running? Yeah, maybe. Is it as illegitimate like the guy who's born in Turkey, age 1, moved to the U.S. and has been a U.S. citizen his entire life? I could see like the legislation coming through saying that, okay, if you've lived here 35 years, then you can run. You know what I mean? So it basically, you have to be the age of the president.
I think I know what you mean from a sensible point of view, but like from the letter of the law, when you like actually go and read it, I think his arguments are crap. I think it's very obvious that,
Unless
like, yeah, you have to be born American in order to run for the presidency.
he could maybe argue that the spirit of the law from back in the day would support me, that they were basically trying to prevent someone from like
he's
the British
trying to
Empire
argue.
moving here and then trying to become the president and then
He's
handing
trying
it
to
back over.
he's trying to argue. I think it's from the 14th Amendment. He's trying to argue that it's you know, the law must apply to everybody equally, regardless of
from a case
birthplace.
that specifically said except for president.
It's a stupid argument, and I don't think it holds any water. But I'm not to say that I disagree that it makes sense or whatever. Like, you know, like maybe I might even like Arnold Schwarzenegger as president. He wasn't born here. I don't even know if I'd like him as president, actually. I don't know a lot about him other than he was really cool in a lot of movies. But
as California governor, I think he kind of ended up killing off Republicans' chances of ever coming back. In the sense, he was a big personality who was going to win, but he was also
like, what other Republican would have won a governorship?
100%. But I think he ended up also softening the Republicans over time in a bad way.
Yeah, well, I mean, he was a moderate, and that's what you have to do when you're in a state that's like
Lee Zeldin. I think Lee Zeldin has been such an amazing figure for New York Republicans because he's a strong Republican who almost beat Hochul, and he flipped a bunch of Asian and Jewish neighborhoods red in like Brooklyn. And it's like, I don't think I don't know who's run for it, like Meliogakis lady. I forget how to say her name exactly, but she wouldn't have been able to pull that off. And it's because she's too soft a Republican to really kind of break through in people's minds and listen to her. Because you almost have to be almost more intense of a person to flip an area than you need to be able to hold it. You can be a soft Republican to hold Susan Collins. Maybe that works for New Hampshire. She's very much a New Hampshire Republican, but in most places, if you need to flip it from Democrat to Republican or Republican to Democrat, you actually kind of need a bit of a firebrand because no one's going to pay attention if you aren't.
Oh shit! It looks like Ramaswamy's dropping out.
That's funny. Well, he's probably realizing that if he stays in, Trump's going to kick him in the nuts again. He's not going to get to be the press secretary for a week like Scaramucci.
He should have dropped out a long time ago. Oh, I was going to open up the audio, but yeah.
Can I quickly tell you, because Vivek just came up, can I tell you a Vivek Ramaswamy story from my riding in Signal Hill?
Yeah, go ahead.
This is the weirdest thing you're ever going to hear. So I door knock and it's super cold. So I hope that everyone thinks I'm a trooper because it's like,
you know what? Hey man, you talk about cold. I'm living down here in Texas. You know, it got like 5 degrees below freezing here. I saw like an eighth of an inch of snow, man.
Yeah. So I was door knocking at one point when it was -4 Fahrenheit.
God.
I actually, on another day, I'm just trying to calculate it here. I was out door knocking when it was -13 Fahrenheit. And then anything past that, someone would have probably slapped me for making them open their door. But people are give you a lot of leeway in Alberta. But anyways, I was walking down this one area, and it's kind of a bit of a wealthier neighborhood. It is Calgary Signal Hill overall has quite a high GDP per capita. I think it's like, I'm trying to calculate it now what the average income in this area is. It's like almost 100,000 USD is the average income in my riding. It's a pretty bougie area in a certain sense. But anyways, I was walking down the street from like Elmont or Springbank or whatever. And like I knocked on this one guy's door. Immediately when he opens it, I probably pegged him probably around anywhere from 22 to like 32, Asian male. You just can never tell how old someone is when they're Asian. That's the amazing armor of being Asian. This man could have been 56 years old, and I would have still thought he was 24. I am not even kidding. And another door near to where I live, I opened it. I said, "Oh, hey, blah blah." I even said, "Oh, hey, are you 18? Are you 18? Can you vote?" And he's like, "I'm like 28." I'm like, "Oh, I feel like such a jerk." And he's like, "But it's like you do like 14 years old." I didn't even think he was old enough to vote. Anyways, this other guy. This other guy in this Elmont area 24, 30, whatever. It doesn't really matter what his age is. And I'm like talking to him, oh yeah, I'm running for the Conservative Party nomination, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, oh, hey, I don't really follow Canadian politics, but I follow US politics. And I really like Vivek Ramaswamy. I'm like, this is an ideal person to talk to, in the sense that a lot of people who are into online politics like hyperbolic figures like Vivek. But hey, he's broken the ice. I can talk to him about any issue. And I brought up like, because the Conservative Party's trying to like reduce immigration now because of just how crazy high it is. And I brought up like, yeah, I think we should be reducing immigration. Probably even maybe we should reduce it by 2/3 because of how crazy out of control it is. And this guy was like, actually, I think that we need more immigration because we need to be able to fill jobs. And
God,
what is going on? And he wasn't pro-life. He wasn't, not at all, wasn't religious in any way. He just indicated that. I didn't ask him. And then also it turns out, because I was like, oh, we should maybe add a values test back onto our immigration tests, that you shouldn't be able to come to this country and say, also death to America, death to Canada kind of a thing. You shouldn't be able to come to this country and say, yeah, I'm also secretly a member of the IRA, that we should have at least some idea of that you don't hate our country if you move here. And he then, because I said, hey, there's a lot of people, Hamas people rallying downtown, and I think that stuff should be, made sure that we don't have people coming in who are in favor of that stuff. The man became the most anti-Semitic person I've ever talked to in my life. Like, he was just talking about and he literally got really snippy, and then closed his door very fast after he said, Hamas exists for a reason. And I said, no, it doesn't. Or he said, for a good reason. I said, no, it doesn't. The man assumed that Hamas must have started back in 1947, not realizing Hamas is a armed branch of the Muslim Brotherhood from the 20s. He's looked so young, but that is what being online too much does to your brain. He's like fully pickled his brain with online politics. His own candidate he likes in the US would hate everything about his positions, but he's just convinced himself that Vivek agrees with this stuff. And I guarantee the guy watches Nick Fuentes.
That's insane. Jesus.
A man who would want him kicked out of the country.
Oh my God. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what you run into when you're interacting with the public. I've noticed this myself. Just interacting with random people in the public. It's like, and online, you expect it. You expect it online, It's just like, when you run up against that kind of thing in real life, it's sort of jarring.
I had someone try and physically attack me at their door one time.
Oh my God.
There's just crazy people. It had nothing to do with politics. Just a crazy old man who doesn't want to talk. And the thing is, that
would be me. That would be me, probably. Come up to my door. I'm just like, get the fuck out.
The funny thing is, he was making the interaction, because he was like, I don't want to talk, I'm busy. And I'm like, well, I can just give you this and let you go check out my website. And then he cut me off before I could even say that. And said, I don't want to talk. And then chased me into a bush. And he's like, why did you hit my bush? Because you chased me into it. Every step of that was his fault.
I can relate to that, man. I can relate.
He shouldn't be living in the most highly trafficked part of the neighborhood. He lived on a corner next to a park. It was so dumb. Anyways, but honestly, every time people who get way too into online politics, every time I interact with these people, it's the People's Party of Canada, the super, super right wing. When I say super right wing, they're not even that right wing. They're really oddly. They're popular.
I was going to ask you about
left wing on an issue one day.
I was going to ask you about this earlier. About I think I tried to get into this with you earlier about what is Canadian conservatism, because American conservatism is, it's obvious. We've got evangelicals. It's very pro-life. There's pro gun stuff. There's I don't know, anti-immigration type stuff. Is it similar in Canada, or is there a difference? Are Canadian conservatives distinct from American conservatives in some way, or are there different issues?
A good way of putting it is American conservatives, I'd say, are 50-50 in terms of their ideology. 50% capitalist, 50% conservative. Not that those two things clash. It's just more so conservative principles plus capitalist economics.
Yeah.
In Canada, I would say it's 80% capitalist economics, 20% conservatism.
Okay, so it's the fiscal conservative versus the social conservative, I guess is what you're getting at.
Our pro-life movement is very much it's very much monopolized by Catholic groups for the most part. That's something that happens a lot, not in a bad way, but it's just more so it's very specific groups who are very much pro-life campaigners. Where in the US it's saturated so much. There's evangelical groups, there's Catholic groups, there's probably even Orthodox and Jewish groups who are pro-life specific on their issues, where in Canada there's about 4 or 5 big pro-life groups, and most of them are kind of like Catholic groups. So it's very cultural. They're very concentrated where they're popular and stuff like that.
Yeah, I've noticed the Catholics in America, they're kind of a weird class. They're different, actually. People might not expect this because they think of all Christians or all Christians, but Catholics versus Protestants and evangelicals are very different in my experience. Catholics, some of them are very they're less libertarian, I guess is the thing. They're more theocratic. They even have like this thing of there's actually a heresy in Catholicism that is called I think Americanism or something. They're against liberalism.
That's why, even though some of the originators, and I agree with James Lindsay on this, that Christian nationalism is an op, there's a reason why some of the originators of Christian nationalism are like quote unquote reformed Christians. But most of the people who are adherents, or the hardcore adherents, actually tend to be Catholics. So you get Nick Fuentes and all those people tend to be like, the Baked Alaska. I don't follow them, obviously, or watch them, but I know they're all Catholic because Catholicism has all this sort of symbolism that is very, it's very attractive to people who are purely religious for political reasons, whereas evangelicals don't really get into that as much, even though it's technically evangelicals who started Christian nationalism. The thing is that in Canada, you also have to realize that we have very specific Protestant groups who are really powerful in specific areas. So Calvinism is not something that you hear being like a really big thing in the U.S. when it comes to different
Presbyterians.
Presbyterians are a bit different. They're very general and they don't have a specific ideology.
They're like Calvinists, though.
Yeah, like I'm a Baptist, so we're like the famously separation of church and state people, so we don't really care too much and we don't get involved. But like what you get with Calvinists is, and it's not literally nothing bad. I would be technically very Calvinistic myself, but you get like districts in Canada or ridings that have a massive Calvinist vote. So there's politicians like Sam Oosterhoff, who's an MPP, a member of provincial parliament in Ontario, who everyone referenced. He was 18 when he was made the candidate, 19, and it's because there was such a strong Calvinist support base in his riding that got him nominated. Even my friend Chantal de Jong, even though she is herself a Baptist, she is Dutch, so everyone assumes Dutch Reform, and then so all the Dutch Reformed voters voted for her, not in a way where they just voted for her like just for no reason because of that, but she was able to relate to farmers and whatnot in her riding when she won her nomination. She was only 27 now. She won it back when she was 26, but that religious connection is much more direct, where in the US I feel like it's more ideological. In Canada, if you walk up to someone's door and you're the right religion, you can oftentimes win that house.
Yeah, that's weird to me because like to me Calvinist is it's almost I guess I'm from Texas. It's almost synonymous with Presbyterians, and they're
we just happen to both sprinkle babies.
It's a predestination type thing. It's less political, I guess, than theological.
Presbyterians are squishier, is what I would say. There's actually even a section of my riding I haven't door knocked yet, but it's called Dutch Acres because there's 2 Congregationalist churches right next to each other.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just the way I viewed Calvinists, is that they're big on the predestination stuff. It's Presbyterian from my point of view, but
I would call like Calvinist Congregationalists, Reformed people, and Baptists to a certain extent, but we're a little bit removed. Very textbook Christians in the sense that you're like, you reference something and they can tell you the book, chapter, and verse.
They're heavy on the Bible, yeah. Yeah, I definitely get that a lot. Baptists are the biggest contingent, I think, and even here in Texas.
Yeah, Mississippi is like the second biggest Baptist jurisdiction on the planet. Do you know which one's the biggest Baptist jurisdiction on the planet?
I don't know, Texas.
No. Actually, it's not anywhere near. It's Nagaland, India. A province in India is 78% Baptist.
Well, that makes sense. I mean,
India didn't give a crap about it, and then a bunch of Baptist missionaries basically converted a bunch of. When I say this, I'm not even trying to be offensive. Literal headhunters into being Baptists. So now it's very much, you'd go there and you'd think you were in Malaysia because everyone there very much looks Malaysian or like they're from Burma.
Well, listen to Nikki.
I am so
my girl here. So proud, coming in third place.
I'm not offensive in any way. I think they've actually been trying to darken her skin for the things. No,
I don't know about that, man.
No. I mean, like before, when she was in the UN, it felt like they were putting makeup on her that does well under lighting, and I think that they're trying to emphasize that she's Indian. Because oftentimes, I think before this, people would see her and they're like, "She's Indian?" Like question mark.
Would that help her? Would that help her in a Republican primary, though?
You have to realize, I think her advisors are stupid. So I think that they think that the initial pitch was, "Hey, I'm an Indian girl from an Indian immigrant family, and I'm here to be president." And it's like it's trying to be that inspiring. Hey, I'm a daughter of immigrants from India, and I could be president. It's like great, but she's leaned into that a lot. Because every time she said she was Indian before this, I was like, based on her makeup, I couldn't tell at all.
Yeah, no, and she also, Nikki Haley doesn't sound like an Indian name to me.
But the kindness of Iowans will never be lost on me.
Nikki, you came in third place, Nikki. Damn it, we were expecting.
You were supposed to be the one purging. I want to check the polls again. Vivek got 2 delegates.
She lost to DeSantis by like 2 points.
There were 14 of us running.
Oh, Nikki.
I was at 2% in the polls. But tonight, Iowa did what Iowa always does. So
I lost with a little bit more grace than you thought.
Nikki, you were at the last Mine register poll. You were at like 20%.
When you look at how we're
Emerson put her at 21.
in New Hampshire,
God, Nikki.
in South Carolina,
You let us down, Nikki.
The problem is it's a caucus. You can come in with less support, but if your people are good at arguing in your favor, you can win. Because there's multiple rounds of voting.
Yeah,
the fact that in most of these caucuses you couldn't get past round 1 is telling.
Is at that same event, and I want to check in with her. She's been covering this campaign for us here at NBC News.
All right, mute that. Yeah, disappointing, Nikki. This seems to just be a total Trump victory. From what I see, he edged out at 51%, which is what he needed to do. DeSantis and Nikki were like apart by 2 points, which is great for Trump. No clear second place, I guess you could put it. I mean, obviously DeSantis is second place, but not a strong second. So
if any DeSantis people are confused at why he didn't do better, I think there's a big disconnect, and this wasn't going to say it earlier. I didn't get into it, but online people who are really into online politics, and I think DeSantis's people are actually honestly a little bit more online than even Trump's people are, because to a certain extent, DeSantis's people like very much follow politics. I don't think these people understand how actual door knocking or campaigning works. And that's what I was saying earlier, like when you were bringing up, like, yeah, there's all sorts of people in real life when you actually start going out there and meeting people. I don't think enough people actually understand how voters think. And I think that's why Haley and DeSantis's campaigns are going to continue to either perform as the polling says, or they're going to underperform, is that they don't understand like the amount of name saturation you need to be able to pull off a victory is just not something that they have. And just going on all the shows on like Fox and CNN is not going to help you, because there is a very fixed group of people who watch those. Most people don't even watch the news in a day.
Yeah. Trump support, it's, they always talk about this. It's rural places, but it's actual people, and it's like, he's got. I don't know. He was president already, so
that's whenever people bring up that's where DeSantis is. This is actually where I even though I really like Ben Shapiro, I disagree with him so much when he brings up like the electability stuff with Trump.
Shapiro seems to be a big DeSantis.
Oh, he 100% is, and I'm fine with that. I legitimately couldn't care less who wins. In a sense that it's not even my job to care who wins anymore. So I'm like,
yeah, you're not even American. What do you care?
No, well, not even that. Like hypothetically, if I win my nomination, it's literally not my job to care about who wins the presidential election. Anyone could win. Doesn't matter. Do you know how many people I'm actually about running against? This shows you how safe this riding is. It's like the most blue conservative riding in the country. Blue being conservative here. 14 people could run. Yeah, I've just heard about another one person that was going to run today. Anyways, but the thing with where was I? Oh goodness,
lost yourself.
Yeah, I legitimately lost myself. Usually, I can think it through. How do I go back to the beginning of this?
GOP voters love POC candidates. I don't know about that.
I think he's being ironic.
Yeah, I don't know. To me, it seems like Trump has locked it up. Is what I would say going out of this. I think Haley. I still think has a chance in New Hampshire, but outside of that, what's she gonna do? I never saw a path forward for her.
And I think people have to be very humble and recognize that most people are not made to be president. Most governors aren't, but I think that I think that America does have a bit of an epidemic of everyone thinking that they should be the president. Because even before they did primaries, inside parties, there wasn't that many people who really tried to push their name forward towards delegates to be the president, because most people knew that they weren't going to be the president.
Yeah. So what do you think going forward, man? Are you who do you like? Maybe I should ask you that in this campaign. You a Trump supporter, DeSantis, Haley, Biden? Who do you want?
I don't even know.
You don't know?
I think it's Trump, and he's going to win the presidency. Because here's something I didn't bring up before. It's going to be Trump beating Biden, or if even Gavin Newsom gets in. I actually think Gavin Newsom has way higher negatives than Biden does, even despite the economy, because people can just look at California. And he reminds everyone of like a creepier version of Joel Osteen. But the problem with the thing for Biden is with Kennedy running, who over time I think voters are understanding that he's basically a Green Party candidate. There's actually effectively 3 Green Party candidates on the ballot. So we're going to have Robert F. Kennedy Jr. We're going to have Cornel West, who, kind of a joke candidate, but if he can grab 2, 3, 4% in downtown Atlanta,
that's enough. That's enough to turn it. That's enough to turn it.
That's death for Biden if Cornel West is in any of these states with a heavy amount of black progressives.
So you think
Jill Stein's there to screw things up a little bit more?
You think
and the Libertarians are like I think the Mises Caucus is specifically running a loser because they want Trump to win. So they're running some random guy. And then no labels still might run Manchin and someone else. And Manchin is not someone who Trump voters are going to take a look at. Yeah, some independents you might wrestle some independents over from Trump. But even still, like Trump and Biden do get hurt a little bit by the third parties, but Biden's obviously losing more. And even the head-to-head between Trump and Biden, Trump's still winning by like 1 or 2% based on the average I've seen. And 1 or 2% is way more than enough you need to win as a Republican in the U.S., considering that the Democrats just run the vote tally up in New York and California where they don't need it. And in the swing states, they underperform.
Yeah, I've said it before. I think almost any Republican could beat Biden at this point. I think Trump probably has the worst chance out of any Republican to beat Biden because
I think he has the best, just simply because I think that Haley,
because of the baggage. But
I think Haley doesn't perform as well as you would think, and I think DeSantis, like I've said before, is a bad guy. He's a bad campaigner the first time around.
Yeah, I think it's just the baggage, man. I think Trump drives out votes on the other side. I think that he doesn't. I'm not going to say he doesn't have a chance. And actually, after having talked to you, I think Trump has a good chance. I might even go from, I said before 60-40. I might be more at 50-50 now. Looking at like a Trump versus Biden campaign, because it's just so people hate Biden. They really do. And independents don't like him, but independents hate Donald Trump too. And it's a confusing thing. And I think it's going to come down to, I don't know. I think it's going to be close. I guess that's what I'll say. I think it's going to be close.
I honestly think at this point that Trump could win the popular vote and beat Biden.
Really?
The problem, I think, with Biden, and it's not because mail-in votes were being stolen and whatnot. I think that the problem with 2020 is that everyone was sitting at home. When I say the problem, I mean the problem.
Well, it's also
in terms of a Trump re-election.
It's also
the problem for Trump was that people were sitting at home with nothing better to do but watch Jimmy Kimmel and a lot of other late night shows. And when you're sitting at home and you get a mail-in vote delivered right to your door and you have nothing better to do, you might as well vote. I think that we're not going to have the turnout that we did. And I think the turnout mostly benefited Biden.
Yeah, that's true. And I think it also hurt Trump that he told all of his supporters, don't vote early, don't vote by mail, don't do that stuff.
That's the funny thing. I think that's where Charlie Kirk might be rescuing Trump, because he's doing a full campaign across the country of just saying, vote however you can vote.
Yeah. That was such a stupid, insane thing.
Honestly, that's probably what lost him. Regardless of all the Hunter Biden laptop stuff and whatever, who cares? You can only control what you can control, and you can control telling people not to flipping vote.
Don't tell your voters not to vote by mail or not to vote early. That was such an insane.
Yeah, there's a lot of sketchiness going on.
And I agree. I agree.
Being suppressed and whatnot, but when you tell your people not to vote, it's your fault.
Yeah, and I agree. I've talked to lots of Republicans and Trump supporters and stuff that like legitimately think. They don't think the election was stolen like for crazy reasons or whatever. They'll say it was stolen because of the different rules. Essentially, there was so much mail-in voting and all of this. And then I'll bring this up like, well, yeah, there was all this mail-in voting, but also Trump said, "Don't vote by mail." They're like, yeah, that was fucking stupid. Like, you shouldn't have done that. And it's just like.
I've just realized how stupid I am. Where's that one lady who all the people hate? Was she the Michigan governor who's like the crazy lockdown lady?
I don't know.
Okay, yeah, because Kristi Noem's South Dakota governor and Doug Burgum is North Dakota. Because I heard that Trump just basically said that Doug Burgum's probably going to get an appointment somewhere.
What?
Yeah, because this guy I follow, the Calvin Coolidge Project, who seems to be pretty on top of things. He said the new Donald Trump said North Dakota Governor Doug Burgum will be an important part of his next administration in some form of capacity. Does that give you more confidence or not? I don't even know.
Confidence in what? Well, I mean,
he's a very vanilla person to give a job to.
Yeah, well, it's the whole thing with Trump, man. Is I don't know. It's like I said, I called him a black box earlier. Trump to me is a black box. I don't know what we're gonna get out of a second Trump administration, and it was the same with the first one. It was scary, but he ultimately just put in a position. He built an administration that was normal. It was a bunch of normal Republicans that were competent at their jobs. If he did that again, I don't think it would be that much of a problem. I I feel like it's going to be whoever's loyal to him. So maybe it's normal people like that. But I feel like it's going to be a bunch of crazy people. Like, who even knows? Like, I don't know. I have no idea what a second Trump administration would look like. Like I said, it's a black box in my view.
Yeah. I think it's probably going to be more normal than you'd think. I don't think the Mike Flynns of the world are probably going to get anything because I don't know. Trump's the type of guy where I think if people praise him a lot, they get some benefits, but too much and they kind of dump, and he kind of dumps them because I think he's still the type of guy where if you're incompetent, he'll like shred you because he's kind of that person that likes when people praise him, but he also doesn't care about destroying them either.
Yeah, he does seem to, at least
like Vivek was a perfect example.
Yeah,
as soon as you do anything wrong, he will squash you.
It's
although
true,
he
but
still
it's
keeps
also
stupid
like
people around in his administration. Rudy Giuliani was a stupid lawyer to be employing.
he's also like sometimes he's cool with people that even criticized him. Like Nikki Haley, he appointed her as UN ambassador, right? But even before that, she had sort of contentions with him. But he did it because he saw that she was competent and good at maybe good for this position. And he seemed to have done that throughout his first administration, which maybe gives me like hope going forward. Is he'll just like look at like who's going to be good at this job and stuff. But I'm almost worried that he's going to be in this weird place where they've gone after him so hard now.
Well, here's the advantage
all the legal stuff where I feel like he's going to be so defensive. And
here's the thing with whoever was the guy who was going to lose and then come back. Whoever is the Grover Cleveland in the scenario, ends up benefiting because they can look at whatever people didn't like and they can correct it, and whatever people like, they do more of it. So I think in foreign policy, because Biden is basically proving everyone doesn't like the very soft kind of like UN style negotiator position that Biden takes. The idea that whatever problem we're having with the Houthis, let's talk it out before we do anything.
Yeah. He's been so
Trump's going to like basically prove, because he's done a lot of the comparisons of the Houthis with ISIS and Hamas with ISIS and a lot of other people with ISIS, that he'd be the type of guy who would then come back and then start like slamming people with heavy artillery just to prove that he's not like Biden. And that's the funny thing, is that Trump's very reactionary, and in a lot of ways that makes him do very stupid things. But because Biden's such a terrible president, in reactionary fashion, if he just does what the opposite of Biden's doing, it would be
true. That's true.
that's my case for Trump, is that
that's actually
true. He's
so
reactionary, he will do good things. He will give just Taiwan a bunch of money on day one, cut taxes, and do it because just Biden didn't.
That's actually, I didn't even think about that. That's actually true, because if you look at what he did with the Obama stuff, and a lot of stuff he did was just like, I'm going to tear down whatever Obama did, which actually ended up being good because Obama did a lot of bad stuff.
In some cases with NAFTA, it was like stupid. In some cases with NAFTA, it was bad, but that only proves the rule that he just does the opposite.
I think the one thing I am worried about with him is pulling out of NATO. Like I feel like he might just do that.
The thing is that I think that with a lot of the NATO stuff, he always kind of saber rattles about it, but it's more so trying to get people to do their military spending. Because he actually did get some of the countries to increase the military spending. Like
he wants them to contribute, and I think you could, especially now.
Is that when people aren't making their payments, why should you respect them?
Yeah, and I think especially now, given the stuff in Ukraine, you could get a lot of the European countries they already have, honestly, like to up their military spending.
That's where people like Tucker are such idiots when they look at Ukraine and they pretend like Biden, like Trump would have been different from Biden. Oh, Trump would have been supporting this like war criminal, whatever, money laundering guy.
He would have been.
Trump was the guy giving more money than Obama and Biden was to Ukraine before the war started. That's the funny thing. Biden cut funding to Ukraine, Georgia, and the Eastern Bloc countries when he came in. Trump would have just sustained the funding. Putin assumed he could beat Biden in terms of like the world political games. because he showed up, because Biden started reducing spending on Ukraine aid. It's actually Trump who kept Ukraine aid steady. He wasn't spending too much, but he kept it steady enough that Russia wasn't going to chance anything. That's the funny thing. All the people who are like on the right talking about how bad Zelensky is and we should have just let him burn or whatever. And what the Ukraine survived because of all the Trump aid.
Yeah.
Because it took like months for any of Biden's like spike in aid to actually show up into the war.
Yeah, and I complained a lot about that. I feel like we never gave them enough to actually do anything, and he was always like, Biden's whole thing is like, oh, I don't want to escalate stuff, and I don't want to piss off Russia because they have nukes. It's like, dude, we've got nukes too. Like, I understand.
They're gonna nuke us for what? For
Yeah,
what?
and like, want? Is Russia? Are we supposed to be more scared that Russia's gonna nuke us than Russia is that we're gonna nuke them? Like, you're out of your mind, man. Like, we have the shit too. Come on. And I don't know. I feel like it's like Ukraine has been a mixed bag. You know, it's a stalemate now. I guess it's whatever. But anyway, I guess we'll wrap up here. We're coming up almost on 2 hours now, but we're looking at the polls here, and nothing has changed. It's Trump around 50%.
You know, they made our jobs very easy. I didn't have to say anything about like, well, what do I think is going to happen? Because it already happened.
Yeah, it was just like what you would have thought. Well, I guess the one thing coming into this, they were saying Nikki Haley was going to have a strong like second place, or she was going to be in second place. She wasn't. She was in third place. That puts a dent into her, and so even if she wins New Hampshire, it seems done. I think from this, what we're looking at here, it's over. I guess.
Well, yeah,
I think we can say it's over.
If Haley needed to pick a new campaign slogan, it would be indifference.
Yeah.
Her voter is the person who's not too fired up, but also doesn't like Trump too much.
Well, yeah, her Nikki Haley's whole support base, in my understanding, was maybe some center-right people, but mostly like independents that are allowed to vote in the primaries, and some Democrats and stuff. People like me, maybe. And then DeSantis probably wanted some of those same people, and it seems like they just sort of split it, and it didn't serve either of them well, and Trump won handily here. And I think Trump's got the nomination. I don't know if it's too early to say it. I feel like Trump's just won the GOP.
He's won. Like, and the thing is, I know it's the most ridiculous thing I ever see. It doesn't matter what you think of Trump. Whenever the media starts doing maybe he's cognitively slipping. No, he's not. Like, shut up. Trump gets more energy. Trump's like Teddy Roosevelt. If he's doing something, he's extremely energetic and almost de-ages whenever he's doing something. When he's not, if he becomes the president again, and he stops being president, it will look like the guy like dying at the end of the Last Crusade. He'll immediately start just deteriorating because he's nothing left to do. That's the thing with Trump. And the more energy he has, the younger he is. He's like a vampire.
Yeah, I think I agree, man. Anyway, I think I don't know. I guess that's it. Unless you had some final thoughts or anything.
No. I don't really have any final thoughts other than I will publicly invite you onto my channel for a live stream someday if you ever want to come and talk about
Canadian politics.
Not Canadian politics. I'll invite you on like a very general one. Like maybe I'll force you to watch the CBC and just have to suffer through what I have to suffer through.
Oh God. Yeah, I would definitely do it, man.
You want to watch mild opinions for an hour straight where nobody says anything because they're all I'm not even kidding. I did an episode. I did a stream the other day. I usually just do standalone like videos. I did a stream the other day where I was watching the CBC thing and they had a liberal representative, an NDP representative, and a conservative. The problem was, one, the conservative wasn't conservative at all. And they're all lobbyists, so they can't say anything, or they're not going to be allowed to continue to lobby. So they're all saying just non sequitur opinions about nothing. They're like, every time something that should be a yes or no is thrown at them, they're like, well, there's a lot of nuance here. And then they'll just start talking about nothing. Because if they say anything, they will not be allowed to negotiate contracts for Costco anymore. That's the CBC.
Yeah, I'm definitely down, man. That's like a good time to be.
I'll have you on with Daniel Boardman. I think you guys get along well.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's like Daniel. It's like I said, the only things I know about Canadian politics comes from you and Daniel for the most part.
The right sources to get your information.
Other than when something like crazy happens, like when you have a giant like trucker protest and then it shows up in American media, and then I see that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's nuts over here. Anyways, but other than that, I have nothing to say. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thanks for coming, man. All right, everybody, have a wonderful night, everyone.